Last time in this Surah Ar-Rahman series,
I can understand what's the most beautiful thing from my imagination. I have a standard, I have expectations, I have desires. I can come up with things that I want, but Allah is not saying, if you do the best, I will give you the best based on your imagination. He's saying, I'll give you the actual best, which is way above and beyond what I could have imagined. But even that's not enough. And he said, and I've got some more on top of that.
Ar-Rahman allama al-Qur'an.
To help you follow along and reflect more deeply, we've created a companion workbook for this series. Download it at bayyina.com/Rahman.
فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما فاكهة ونخل ورمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن خيرات حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان حور مقصورات في الخيام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان.
Anyway, so فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Now, okay, so do you remember the next description in the last Jannah? Rivers. فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ تَجْرِيَانِ. Like there's two rivers flowing, which can mean multiple waterfalls flowing. What we get here is فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ, same thing, two waterfalls, but this time نَضَّاخَتَانِ. نَضَّاخَتَانِ. And something I didn't tell you, you're walking through the branches. If you're walking like in the fall, when you see the branches, you don't see the leaves, you see the branches. Can you see through the trees? Yeah, because there's no leaves. But when the trees are full, can you see through them? No, the leaves block your view, right? Especially if they're very lush. So previously you're walking through the branches, maybe you can see there's a clearing up ahead. When you're walking through mudhamatan, you cannot see what's coming ahead. So it's more of a mystery of what's coming. And when you finally got there last time, you saw that there's lots of waterfalls that are flowing. And the verb tajriyan was used. But now you arrive and you see aynan, and their description is naddakhatan. Naddakhatan. First of all, ayn is actually obviously water spring, but naddakhatan fawaranul ma is extreme gushing of water. Indifa'uhu kharijan biquwa, when something gushes out really like Niagara Falls kind of thing, like it's really pumping out. It's not just flowing. You can end up at a creek, and that could be ayn tajri. That could be a creek. But ayn nadakha is like it's just coming out. So you're at this magnificent waterfall that's coming. وَكَانَ مِن سُفُلْ إِلَى عُلُو فَهُوَ نَضْخ. And it's falling so hard, the water is slamming so hard that actually the mist from the water is going from bottom to up. The water is rising, like the mist and the droplets of water are now coming into the air, right? That's the scene that you walk into. Is this more or less intense? This is far more intense. Similarly, actually in the Arabic language you have nadh, not nadh, nadh. And that's actually just the mist in the air that comes from water splashing. But if there's a lot of mist in the air and it's a very intense waterfall, then the ha becomes a kha, and that becomes nadh. Actually, so it's the stronger of the two that's being described in this ayah. And then on top of that, naddakhatan. This is why Arabic study is so important. It's not just nadh we're dealing with; it's the ism mubalagha. It's fa'al, naddakh. So when you say khabbaz, it's someone who makes, khubz is, right? Bread. So one who makes bread over and over again becomes a khabbaz. A qissa is a story. Someone who tells stories over and over again becomes a qassas. And a qass is also cutting. So the guy who cuts the meat over and over again also becomes a qassas, a butcher, right? So a khayt is a thread and khayyat is a tailor because they use the thing over and over again, right? So Allah is the giver of gifts. He gives gifts over and over again. So He's Wahhab. Allah forgives over and over again. So He's Ghaffar. Right? Ghaffar. So when you have words that spell like that, Ghaffar, Khayyat, Qassas, Fa'al, that's someone who does something over and over again. This waterfall is Naddaha. It keeps giving these springs, the spring keeps coming out over and over and over again, compounding on each other. Right? And there's lots of them all over the place. And you're just in awe of what you're seeing. This is far more intense than the last image. Also, this is a noun, mudhamatan, and tajriyan was a verb. And in Arabic rhetoric, the ism is stronger than the fi'l, right? So this is another linguistic reason why this is stronger. So would you rather the scorching water than the soothing mist jumping out of Jannah springs? فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ? Come on. On the one hand, imagine the water that was being described in Jahannam. We already read about that. And on the flip side is this. On the flip side is this. And you're still being this stupid, So that the question now takes another tone. Come on. Come to Allah's rahmah. It's an invitation to Allah's rahmah. فِيهِمَا فَاكِهَةٌ. In them both there are fruits. Do you remember the discussion of fruits? Okay. So last time it was min kulli fakihatin zawjan. From every kind of fruit there will be two. The folks that argue that Jannah is better actually use this one as their main arguments. Look, Allah said all kinds of fruits and they'll have two of each, right? Here He doesn't say all kinds of fruits and two of each. He simply says what? Fakihatun, fruits. The difference though is when you say fakihatun, then you're actually using the ism jins. The ism jins means all fruit of all kinds. Actually. So if you don't say min kulli fakiha, and you don't say zawjan, you just say fakiha, you actually incorporated everything that's been said before, and you added a next level of diversity. Fruit of all kinds. Okay? Fakihatun. The other interesting thing here is wa nakhlun wa rumman. Palm trees, date palms, and pomegranate. So Allah added two specific fruits after that, right? Now, this is where Allah has taken something very specific to the Arabian region. Like to them, palm trees, of course, date palms are a necessity and also an exotic thing. And of course, pomegranate is like really luxurious, elite fruit. In fact, even now in the grocery store, pomegranate is more expensive than any other fruit. And pomegranate juice is more expensive than any other juice, even now. It has more health benefits than any other juice, right? So it's now we know even its benefits and acknowledge them and recognize them. But what's cool here is Allah didn't say an-nakhl war-rumman. In the Arabic language, when you refer to known fruits, then you put al on them. But here there's a nakira. There's a tanween on both of them. Nakhlun wa rummanun. You know what that means? Some kind of date palms you ain't never seen before. And some kind of pomegranate that you don't know what that is. Some new kind. But still it has to be acknowledged that this is very specific to the Arab taste. This, I believe, is because Allah has given a special ode, a special acknowledgement to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, the first of the Muslims. We're sitting here learning the Quran because of those people. Those people got beat up, those people got tortured, those people stuck by the Prophet ﷺ, those people starved, those people went homeless, those people went to war, those people lost their loved ones, so we could say La ilaha illallah one day. And what the Quran does, when it gives us a view of the elite Jannah, it gives us a taste of things that those Arabs of that time, the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, they would have been like, wow, there's going to be palm trees? There's going to be pomegranate? Some in 2023, someone's like, is there chocolate? Is there chocolate? And what kind? Is it dark or is it like, I just want to know, is there ice cream? Is there any mention of ice cream in Jannah? That would be to our taste. Do you understand? But Allah is not speaking to our taste. He's speaking to their taste. I would argue He's speaking to their taste because they are as-sabiqun. They are the first and the foremost. So Allah gave them this special. That's why there's no biryani in the Quran. There's no, chicken masala, tikka, whatever. No, there's none of that stuff. You're not going to find that here. But you will find things that are very particular to the Arab taste. Now, the Orientalist, right, the Westerner that's studying Islam from the outside, they study Islam like somebody studies a corpse, right, without a soul. So they're like, these, the primitive Arabs, they preferred palm trees and pomegranate, and therefore the Quran speaks in their terms. How primitive. I'm like, yeah. Go buy your $19 pomegranate juice from Whole Foods and then tell me how primitive that is. And then pay extra for your vacation. The most expensive vacation spots you go to have palm trees on them. How primitive. So... And when he says, there's waterfalls in them and there's water springs in them, the most expensive buildings, the most expensive, headquarters and exotic cities, what do they'll put? They'll put water fountains. They'll put water features. They'll have rooftop waterfalls. They'll all this stuff, man. The most expensive real estate on earth is waterfront. And if you get real estate that overlooks a waterfall, forget it. Forget it. It could be in the middle of nowhere. You're going to pay an arm and a leg just because you have the view of the water, right? There is actually a science in places like Florida, California, etc. If you're home, you can see from the side of the window. If you can see the water, then the price is different. But if you could have a direct view, the price is totally different. Hotels, they'll say, do you want sea view or do you want garage view, right? And garage view, they'll charge you $800 less. And sea view, the hotel room is still the same hotel room. The only difference is what? You get to see the water. That's all. Just that. And the price completely changes. So Allah is not speaking to some primitive Arabs that had these, please. Allah spoke to humanity in a way that we know that 200 years from now, 500 years from now, people are still going to desire the things Allah put inside of our nature to desire. So فِيهِمَا فَاكِهَةٌ وَنَخْلٌ وَرُمَّانٌ. I would argue, again, this is an upgrade. This is actually an upgrade. And then فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Now we get to the spouses. And it's interesting, this time, this is also really cool. The last time Allah mentioned seating first. Do you remember the pillow and the auntie, the whole story, right? Right, so the khaltu. So that was first, and then there was the beautiful spouse. You remember? This time, Allah will mention the beautiful spouse first and then end with the seating. So it's this part has been reversed. Everything else was going in the same order, but this has been reversed. And the thing that's mentioned last is the thing that's the climax. So the climax in the previous heaven was what? The spouse. And the climax in this heaven seems to be what? No, the seating. The seating, relaxing. This also, I think, is a profound, profound thing. There are people who fought their desires, right? And for them, the ultimate climax of heaven is that they no longer have to fight their desires. Then there are people who just worked and worked and worked and worked. They just wanted to do ihsan. Their focus wasn't fighting their desires or getting away from the haram. Their focus was, Ya Allah, life is short. I gotta do more before I die. I just need to push myself and They exhausted themselves. Like Allah says about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانصَبْ. When you're finally done, then relax. Then exhaust yourself in remembering Allah. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam cannot relax. He's continuously pushing himself. The Sahaba aren't relaxing. They're continuously pushing themselves. When someone's exhausting and pushing themselves, what's the ultimate reward for them? Now the rewards of what I've done. In a very dunya sense, there are people who develop the right kind of business mentality. They even put that business mentality into their kids. Listen, you could spend your youth having a good time and then work your butt off in your 30s and your 40s, and eventually you might have enough savings to live a decent life by the time you get to your 50s and 60s. Or you can decide to just put your head down and get right to work even when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, and you'll be done by the time you're 25, and you can relax and have a good life. You have a choice. You want to be stupid until you're 30? It's up to you, right? And there are people who actually retire by the time they're 27. They do. But how do they retire by the time they're 27? You look at them working 100 hours a week, even when they're 15 years old. They get this mentality in them, I'm going to retire early, right? Well, that's just in the dunya sense. There are people like that. But imagine in the akhirah sense. I'm just going to put my work in because I want that permanent retirement, that permanent relaxation. What Allah has not mentioned here, that He's already alluded to in the previous surah, in Surah Al-Qamar, which is why there's a connection between this climax and the last surah's climax. In the last surah's climax, not only are they sitting and relaxing, they're sitting next to Allah. Actually. فِي مَقْعَدِ صِدْقٍ عِنْدَ مَلِيكٍ مُقْتَدِرٍ. They're sitting next to Allah. In this world, they're trying to make Allah happy, trying to make Allah happy, trying to make Allah proud, trying to make Allah proud. And then they get to sit next to Allah. Right? So that's why that's the climax now at the end. So I would argue even that is an upgrade. So there are two companies, right? There's the company of spouse and there's the company of God Himself. Right? So as wonderful as the company of the spouse is, there's an upgrade. And that's the company of the one who loves like no one else can love, who appreciates like no one else can appreciate, and that's the company of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So that's going to come at the end. But anyway, even as describing the heavenly spouse now, do you remember the description of the heavenly spouse in the last qasiratul tarf? There were two things about qasiratul tarf. They keep their eyes limited to you, and you also keep your eyes limited to them. You're obsessed with each other. Remember that conversation? Okay. Now Allah is going to give a very different description of these spouses of Jannah. He says, فِيهِنَّ خَيْرَاتٌ حِسَانٌ. In those gardens. Now hinna is plural. It's not hima. It's hinna. It's already giving us a hint that this is not just two gardens. These are multiple gardens. Because if it was just two gardens, it would be hima. Some said, this is referring to all four. All four from before. But I would argue this is actually even going beyond that. Okay? This is just the gardens upon the gardens upon the gardens. We'll have khayratun hisan. Now khayrat means from khayr actually became khayr. It actually refers to the inner goodness of something. The inner goodness of something. And hisan refers to the beauty of something. So to put it very simply, khayrat refers to all the qualities that make someone good on the inside. And hisan refers to all the qualities that perhaps make someone good on the outside. So inside and outside. So it's politically incorrect to describe this way, but there are people that, alhamdulillah, they're very good, men and women that are very good in this world, but they're not very good looking. And then there are people that are very beautiful, but they're not very good on the inside. Like they're beautiful on the outside, very ugly on the inside. They're mean, arrogant, self-centered, cruel, right? And perhaps it's their looks that makes them that way. They feel like they're superior to others. They feel like they have choices endlessly. They can do whatever they want. They can be with whoever they want. You don't like it, take a hike, I can just get somebody else. Look at me, etc., etc. That kind of mentality, right? So what happens with beauty sometimes, it's accompanied with ugly characteristics, right? And then the flip also, you might find someone who's really, really, they're not great looking, but they're just a wonderful person. They're brilliant, they're insightful, they're intelligent, and they're a wonderful person, right? And then of course you get the best of both worlds, like Yusuf alayhi salam kind of situation, right? You got like kind of the best of both worlds type situation. But the thing is that here you are, the believer, he wants to be with someone who's nice, but also nice looking, right? He wants both. But which one was given priority in the description? The inside qualities. The likability, the agreeableness. It's also interesting that khayrat then, what's good for me, what the qualities I like, may not be the qualities somebody else likes. Many of you young men aren't married yet. Many of you ladies aren't married yet. When you get married, before you get married, this person is the perfect person for me. Subhanallah, Allah makes the pairs. I so believe that. My iman has gone up so much ever since I got engaged, because I just know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the perfect pair. Right? So, yeah, about that. And then you get married, and then, you get to live with the person, and you see beard clippings in the sink, and you see, the toilet seat not put down, or you see, every time you come home, she's talking to her sister, and, you're like, Assalamu alaikum. Hiya. And so happy on the phone. As soon as she hangs up, you were so happy a second ago on the phone. You were not in a bad mood. Why did you become, So, subhanAllah, Allah really makes the pairs. So so you might find them, and what happens is you might be really attracted to your fiance or your spouse. You're really attracted to them, but when some personality quirks or some parts of them that you didn't know about before, when those things come out, then it doesn't matter how beautiful they look. They stop looking that beautiful to you. You don't find them attractive anymore. Even though anybody else might say, you're so lucky, you're married to someone who's so good looking, who's so beautiful, etc., etc. You don't see it that way anymore, because you don't first see the outside beauty anymore. What you first see is the inside ugliness. Right? You just remember the hurtful words. You remember the dismissal. You remember the condescending looks. These are the things you remember. And so that outside beauty just becomes almost empty. Right? It doesn't have any real meaning anymore. Right? So actually what Allah does in Jannah is He describes khayratun. This is someone you actually want to talk to. Someone you want to be with. Someone who just, everything they do just makes you happy. They're catered to your designs. You were made a certain way, and Allah created someone who perfectly pairs to you. And then they're on top of that, they're beautiful. And actually that's what makes their beauty even more beautiful, is because they are catered to you in this way, right? So, fihinna khayratun hisan is a profound gift of Allah in Jannah. And of course, that also teaches us that that in its pure form may not be possible in this world. You cannot have someone who everything about them is perfect, or exactly the way you like it to be. And the thing is that in Jannah, Allah is creating things catered to our desires. But this life is not about catering other people to our desires. This is dunya. We don't own anybody in this dunya. And what happens sometimes is you just tell your spouse, a wife tells the husband, or the husband tells the wife, I want you to be more like this. I want you to be more like that. I want you to be more like that. And there's, at some level, that's healthy. But at some level, you start bending and twisting this other person and making them into someone they're not. You're trying to make them into someone else. And they start losing themselves. They start breaking. And then they start resenting you and disliking you, because they start feeling like, you don't like me for who I am. You keep trying to make me someone else. You just twist me into this other creature that I'm not. Right? So this is actually one of the things that Allah will not have. We won't have to deal with that in Jannah. It's actually just the person, the way you want them to be, inside and out, and that forever. Right? So fihinna khayratun hisan. So al-khayrat annahunna fadilatun nafs kara'imul akhlaq. Like I was saying, that khayrat means that they are great in their character, their manners, their demeanor. And fi batihinna al-khayr, like Imam Razi says, on the inside they have the best. And then on the outside is sifatul dhawad, husnul khuluq wal khalq, fi zahirinna al-husn. On the outside they have beauty, right? Hisan al-wujuh, al-Qurtubi says this is referring to their beautiful faces. And even faces, a face could be very beautiful, but when it looks at you in a mean way, it's not beautiful anymore, right? Man or woman. The face isn't just about beauty, the face is also about expression, isn't it? Then فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, an additional description. Now the last time we saw قَاصِرَاتُ الطَّرْفِ, and nobody's touched them before. That was the description. And then there was a parallel given. They are like pearls and rubies. Rubies and pearls. Yaqut wal marjan. That was the description that was given. Now we're not going to get a comparison. We're going to get a further description of them. And the description is also really interesting. The first word is hur. And I don't know why hur became like the term for the women of Jannah or the creatures that were made in Jannah, that they're just called hur. Hur is not their name, it's just one more description. Just like khayrat is a description, and hisan is a description, and qasirat al-tarf is a description, hur is also a description. That's not the species called hur. Okay? So we just kind of term these things. We grabbed the word from the Quran, we made it common terminology, but that's actually not what it is. It's just a description of these women. So let's talk about what hur actually means. Jam'u hawra, it's the plural of the word hawra, and dhatul hawar, it means someone who possesses hawar. Now what does hawar mean? It actually means that you can notice that their eyes have very distinct color. And the white of their eyes has no redness in it. It's very distinctly white. And then the pupil is very distinctly black or a very distinct color. And somebody even added shiddatu sawadi aswadiha, like really black, really dark black eyes. But again, I think the word sawad is used in Arab culture for rich color. So it's not just for black. It's like we saw in mudhamatan. So the hawra doesn't have to be someone whose eyes are black, but can be any color, but the color is very rich. Now, why is that important to mention? Because instead of mentioning any other part of them, why the stress on the eyes? Because remember qasirat al-tarf, they're looking at you, you're looking at them. So you're lost in each other's eyes. You're making facial contact. And people that are in marriages know that facial contact is not always easy. Right? So a lot of times you're upset, you're avoiding what? Eye contact. Right? Or there's something on your mind and you don't want to tell her or you don't want to tell him, you're avoiding what? Eye contact. Because the moment you make eye contact, you say, what's going on? Nothing. Why aren't you looking at me? Look at me. Look at me. Because you know, once they look at you, they're like, okay, now I have to tell you everything. Because the eyes give it away. Right? So there's actually this, the word hur also describes this relationship in which you're constantly making eye contact. And that's also been beautified. Then there's maqsurat. Hurun maqsurat fil qiyam. And the word maqsurat, let's read through Alusi and Razi a little bit and get an insight into maqsurat fil qiyam. Imra'atun qasira wa maqsura ay mukhaddara mulazima li baytiha la tatufu fi turuq, meaning that she's anticipating the husband coming into the home. She's holding herself back, preparing herself. It's like the wedding night every night kind of feel. That's what Allah is describing with this word. And by the way, where is she holding herself back in? Not in the home, but it says fil khiyam. You know what a khayma is, right? It's a tent. A khayma is a tent. We go back to the Arab sensibility. Like somebody living in New Zealand is like, what am I going to do with a tent? Why do I need a tent? Can we have like a mansion or a loft and what's with the tent? But if you go to the Khalij and you say there's going to be a tent in Jannah, you're like, what? Yeah, now we're talking. Even now, they're like, some of them are multi-billionaires, and when they want to party, you know what they do? They go out in a tent. They go set up a tent. Like there was, I was recently in Qatar. I was there for Islamic reasons during the World Cup, okay? But anyway, I got invited to a dinner, and so I was like, okay, let's, so one of the shuyukh invited a bunch of us. Imam Siraj was there, and they take us out into the desert. Like where are we going? Are you taking us somewhere where some shady stuff is going down? Like, why are we going in the middle of nowhere? I go out there and they've got the whole, tent set up and, of course a football field and all of it. And because that's their thing, that's their deal. I was invited one time to a family gathering in Saudi, in Jeddah. I was making Umrah, finished Umrah. I try to hide when I'm doing Umrah, right? So somebody looks at me and goes, I was like, yep, Mufti Mank. And I keep going. So like... Right, so but some family recognized me, like, oh my God, you're here. Okay, you know what? We're gonna take you to Medina, and we want you to have dinner with us, etc., etc. We're families from here, etc. I was like, okay, All right, let's do this. So there's like we have this lunch in our tent. I was like, it's pretty hot outside. He goes, don't worry about it. Just we have lunch in our tent. They take me to their home. Their home is like the size of this masjid, baby. And then the backyard, they have this giant yard, which they turned into this marquee tent, like a catering hall, but it's a tent. It was got like AC units running inside and chandeliers and all of it. And this is their family lunch, in a tent. So if these are the tents in dunya, I don't know what kind of tent setup is going on in Jannah. I'm pretty sure it's not like the one you buy from like a camping store and you go and you, well, finally made it to Jannah. like that's not. So there's a beauty to these tents. But anyway, more about مقصورات. وأخرج ابن أبي شيبة غيره قال مقصورات قلوبهن وأبصارهن ونفوسهن على أزواجهن Allah. He said they are restricted. It says restricted in tents. So that sounds like they're under house arrest, right? But actually he says no, maqsurat is a standalone by itself. Their hearts, their eyes, their persons have restricted themselves to pleasing their spouses. Like they've given their heart to their spouse, their selves to their spouse, their eyes to their spouse. ويحتمل كونه صفة لحور فلا تغفل. Meaning their eyes are restricted again, because hur refers to the eyes, right? So it's similar to qasirat al-tarf again. It's another expression for qasirat al-tarf. Okay? But this time the eyes are wide open. وقوله مقصورات في الخيام إشارة إلى معنى في غاية اللطف وهو أن المؤمن في الجنة لا يحتاج إلى التحرك لشيء. Razi says this is a very subtle, beautiful gift that Allah has given, that a believer doesn't have to move around to get anything. Everything moves towards him. فالمأكول والمشروب يصل إليه من غير حركة منه. The drink, the food, everything's just prepared waiting for him. Everything's just there coming towards him. And so this is حور مقصورات في الخيام. And of course then Allah Azza wa Jal gives us فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان, and adds that same description again, لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان. And I'll add one more comment here that I didn't last time. This ayah is twice now in both Jannahs about possessiveness. It's about possessiveness. No man has touched her before. No jinn has ever touched her before. This is emphasizing one concept, which is what? Possessiveness. And possessiveness was about the eyes, wasn't it? Because they're staring at each other. What does that tell you about the way that human beings were created and what they desire? They desire possessiveness. They want a relationship where they feel like they are the center and that their eyes aren't wandering. They're not going everywhere. And when that starts happening, if a wife starts feeling like her husband's eyes are not contained to him, or if the husband starts feeling that my wife's eyes are not contained to me, right? I see her staring at this or that or the other. Or I see nowadays people are watching movies together and she's commenting on how handsome the actor looks, right? Oh my God, he's so amazing. Oh my God, I love him. And she's sitting next to her husband. Oh my God, I love him. You know. And she's saying these things. What does that do to the husband? Even if he doesn't say it. You know what that does? It makes him lose interest in her over time. Like in the beginning, he's upset. But she says, no, it's not a big deal. Come on. Of course, we're human. Just because you're married doesn't mean you're not attracted to anybody else. But Allah has told us to guard our eyes as much as possible, right? And you have to contain that. But when you make that into a joke, and it's not a big deal, you know what happens? Then the one realizes she's not qasiratul tarf. She's not qasiratul tarf. Why would I be? And so he starts to lose interest in her. And when possessiveness goes, when that kind of possessiveness goes, then other things start going with it. This is the Quranic philosophy of relationships. You people give you a million different kinds of relationship advice, right? And nowadays everybody's a relationship expert, right? And they're like, oh, you can just be friends, or he's too possessive, or he's too jealous. If he's so insecure, then you don't need that kind of a man. You need a real man who's not going to be scared of blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, right? This kind of narrative. where everybody can if you have a real trusting relationship, then you should be able to just let your spouse go and this or that or the other. Yeah, because for them, shaitan doesn't exist. For them, temptation doesn't exist. For them, all of these things cannot be acknowledged to them, right? Our Prophet will tell us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a man and a woman should not be alone because the third one will be shaitan. And you tell that to somebody who's too woke now, they're like, oh, you're saying you can't trust me? You're so insecure. You're so perverted that you can't be alone. Excuse me, we're past that now. The world has moved on. Yeah, no, it hasn't. This is what we like to tell ourselves, that we've somehow graduated from our temptations, or we've gone beyond the waswas of shaitan because we're too evolved morally. Yeah, can you see the world around you as morally evolved? If anything, it's devolved, right? But the language sounds like as if we are above and beyond these lowly expectations, or we're being put down. It's beneath us to have these standards. And when you have when you develop this kind of self-righteous arrogance, when it comes to our own weakness and our vulnerability, we end up destroying our own relationships. We destroy our own families, because we're blind to the truth, some very fundamental truths that Allah has given us, and this is one of them. That we do want someone who's, they're qasiratul tarf. And that's the ultimate reward in Jannah. It's been mentioned twice. Why would this be mentioned? You wouldn't think in Jannah, why does somebody have to worry about possessiveness? Who's going to mess with you, man? There's no shaitan. Nobody's going to look at her. People got their own woman to look at, their own wife to look at. But in the core of our being, when it comes to this relationship, there is always going to be a desire to want to have exclusive possession. And that's not about control. That's actually a form of love. And it shouldn't translate into, if some people just turn this into a control, right? I don't want you doing the groceries. I don't want you to, why are you looking outside the window? Don't look outside the window. Look that way. Go over there. Like, that's not possessiveness. That's psychotic control, and that's not what I'm talking about. So, just because there's one extreme of, let's everybody be free, that doesn't mean that the other extreme, let's put them in a cage, that's an extreme too. But there is a middle path that Allah has given us, and we have to observe that. And if we don't observe that, the damage will be on ourselves.
Coming up next time in this Surah Ar-Rahman series.
You know how people nowadays, there's a manifest positive energy. Manifest positivity. Stupid. Like, call on Allah's name. That's positivity. Don't if you just believe that the interview is going to go well, then it's just going to happen. No, when you can put barakah in what you're doing. Like they're talking about all these things that Allah has talked about. All they just do is remove Allah from the equation and then talk about it. Right? That's all is all what they do. And then people are like, what do you think about manifesting positivity? Can you read Fatiha, please? That's manifesting positivity.